most of the time when we say, I don't want you to treat me this way or do this thing, what we get is ghosted or broken up with or left. And if that's what we're getting when we set boundaries, why the hell would we keep setting boundaries? Because what I discovered in my own life and in working with people is when we set boundaries, they're great at chasing crappy people out of our lives, limiting access to people who might hurt us, people who use us. Traditional boundaries are awesome at telling people what they can or cannot do for or to us. The problem with telling people what they can or cannot do and telling people what we will or will not tolerate, the problem with limiting access is that many of the people we might do that with would choose to end the relationship rather than on our boundaries. Many of the people would choose to ghost us, leave, stop talking to us, rather than put in any kind of effort to have a better relationship. Not all people do that, which is why boundaries do work for some people in some situations with some relationships. Traditional boundaries, I'm not saying they're bad because they do work. But if you, the person using the boundaries, doesn't have a healthy grasp on your own values or your own self-worth, you might have difficulty setting boundaries the traditional way, which means you're going to let them cross your boundaries. You're going to be a little soft on holding to your boundaries, which makes boundaries completely ineffective. If the people you are trying to set boundaries with are a little selfish, self-centered, or maybe they're so far as to be narcissistic, if they're not really good at honoring boundaries, or they don't think your boundaries have any value, or maybe they don't think that they want to, that you know what you want, or they know what's good for you more than you know what's good for you. A lot of people are in that situation. They're much less likely to honor your boundaries. And what often ends up happening is we give them a choice, or they make a choice to either honor my boundaries or exit my life. And that's not what most of us want when we set boundaries. We're not trying to chase people out of our lives most of the time. There is the odd toxic relationship where we might be saying, I'm setting boundaries with my ex-husband or my ex-wife, and I'm not going to let them back in my life again. Great. But that isn't most of the time when people are trying to set boundaries. Most of the time when we're trying to set boundaries, we're trying to say, I don't want you to treat me this way that I don't like. Please don't do that. And what we're hoping will happen is that they stop treating us in the way we don't like, but they start treating us in the way we do like. That's what we're looking for. But that's rarely what we actually get. Most of the time when we say, I don't want you to treat me this way or do this thing, what we get is ghosted or broken up with or left. And if that's what we're getting when we set boundaries, why the hell would we keep setting boundaries? Which is why most of us struggle setting boundaries. I created the unconditional boundaries framework to fix that because I wanted to help us create connections that come with boundaries innately built in them. create relationships, build relationships where people automatically treat us the way we want to be treated. Traditional boundaries do a great job of limiting hurt. In a relationship where my best friend is like taking me out all the time to go for dinner, but then they sit and get drunk all the time, and I don't like to drink. That's, what are we going to do? Say, I don't want to go for dinner with you? Or a lot of time we might say, please don't drink when we go for dinner. What they'll do is just stop taking us out. So we lose the thing we like because we didn't want the thing we don't like. Right. And that's often what happens with traditional boundaries. Some of the examples that I've seen are a wife wants to be intimate, sexually intimate with her husband. And she might want to have an emotional connection, and she might feel her emotional connections physically. So she might want to cuddle a little bit or hold hands a little bit, maybe a little bit of kissing before they get into the sexual intimacy so she can feel physically connected to her husband. Husband might come home from work, have a stressful day, not actually want to do any of that, and just go to the bedroom and do the thing and go to bed. A lot of couples, that's the case. So she'll set a boundary. I'm not going to make love to you until we can have some intimate time first. What ends up happening is he comes home from work, has his dinner, and goes to bed. That's often what happens in a romantic relationship. The example I gave around friendship, where one friend drinks and the other friend doesn't. That's a real life example of somebody that I've seen. Clients that I've helped, people that I've known. People set boundaries all the time, trying to teach others how they want to be treated. We set boundaries to try and show others what we will and will not tolerate, what we will and will not accept, what our expectations are, what our needs are. The problem with all of those is if you're setting boundaries around what you will and won't tolerate, you're telling this person, I actually don't like all of you, just these other pieces over here. And we're not even saying I like these pieces over here. We're saying is I don't like these pieces. I don't like the way you do this. I don't like the way you treat me that. I don't like this and I don't like that. So we're focusing on the things we don't like. And there's much less attention on what we love or do like. There's much less attention on what we share, what we enjoy. There's much less attention on this is why we're friends in the first place. This is why I prefer to hang out with my sister more than my brother. This is why I prefer my dad more than my mom. This is why I prefer this coworker over that coworker. This is why you're my best friend and they're just my friend. We focus a lot less on those things because what we're trying to do is limit the things that hurt us. That's a natural thing to do. All of us do it. We're genetically designed to look for danger. So, of course, we're going to focus on that. But by setting boundaries the traditional way, not only are we focusing on the negative, but there's no space for the positive. We don't even have a thought for that. This is why so many of our relationships end up at a maintenance level. We have to put in work. We have to do the work to maintain relationships because we don't naturally think of all the things we share. Right? I have to remember to ask my wife on a date. Shouldn't that be a natural thing? I have to remember to tell my friend that I appreciate them. Right? That's the work. This is the so-called work that we think we have to put in. If we focused on what we liked about each other, That would just come natural, but we don't because we're trying to set boundaries. We're trying to limit the things that cause us harm, that hurt our feelings, that might physically hurt us. We limit those things. And by limiting those things, we are ignoring the reasons we're in this relationship in the first place. We are losing focus from the reason we're here in the first place. So what do we do? What's the solution? Well, the obvious solution, based on what I just said, and based on what a lot of other coaches, a lot of psychiatrists, psychologists, a lot of professionals in this industry might say, well, focus on the positive. Think of the positive. Yeah, great. Let's just be happy. Awesome. We'll be Smurfs or Minions or whatever other happy little kid childish thing you can think of. Yes, wonderful. Except then my friends don't stop doing the shit that I don't like. Then my wife or my husband still hurts me. I'm just going to ignore them. I'm going to forget that they do things I don't like. I'm going to pretend that doesn't exist. Do that for a week and see how that works out for you. I have, and I generally blow my top. Um, you can almost watch the top of my head blow off like a volcano. So no, being happy isn't it. Focus on the positive isn't it. Like that's not the solution. So what is? This is the reason I created unconditional boundaries because most of us are taught that you got to set boundaries and limit how people treat you badly. Don't let them treat you that way. Don't let them do that. Well, great, but what can I let them do? Well, all the things you like, right? But you're not telling me we're not what those are. We're not talking about that. We're not thinking about that. We're not focusing on that. The problem with traditional boundaries is that they focus on the problem, right? Should we not be focusing on the things that bring us together in the first place?